And hello, everybody. Welcome back this time, week 8. Hey, is managers that transform. Managers that transform. Think about the weight of that title that you bear. I love it. And because it does share the power and the richness of what the world requires of its current leaders and managers. Okay, so it's really pretty exciting course. Now, I note in the Moodle week 8, right, that it's challenging to be managers that transform. Hence, this entire 10-week course is a conversation in building blocks that are the tools that will make us the successful leaders and managers that we can be, right? And this age of economic uncertainty, the changes in corporate leadership, which seem to happen a lot, the technological advancements, and other dynamic factors all seem to come to bear like never before. This is one reason a lot of companies are looking towards agile and other tools and forms for innovation, right? And that's an important aspect, but it's not the focus of this week. Those are good tools, those pressures are real, but frequently one overlooked item is the time honored component of everyone's success, and that's employee trust, right? And it can be a costly, grave error in terms of time, money, and reputation if you ignore it. So let's get started. Let's start this week about building trust. Boy, you better trust each other out in that environment. Let's see how this happens. So, one of the things that I want to start with is just by noting that open communication is essential to building team trust. In fact, building team trust requires a number of things. One is open communication. Uh, Transparency is another great way to say it. And this is one reason that agile project management in the workplace is so successful, because it is developed around these concepts of transparency, but just with your team members, open communication. Vulnerability, right? How often do we even use that word? It's a great word. It's powerful. It's a lot of energy, a lot to unpack behind this word. But when it comes to building trust, vulnerability is really, to me, one of the keys. In fact, when my children get married, I have said to them, one of the very last things I say to them is to not just to be in love or to nurture your love. Those are all good things. I agree. But deeper than that, I warn my children, be vulnerable to each other. Be vulnerable. Because only then can you face the world's challenges together, grow together, develop together, and have your love go deeper, in my view, right? So I think it's neat that it was included, that I included here on the slide. Now, you also have to motivate, encourage, and build up your team to a high performing team. So you want to acknowledge their value often. You want to never miss an opportunity when it's appropriate, right? If you overdo some of these things and it's not sincere, you'll lose them. Won't matter. But if you're sincere, this all matters, right? And so you want to acknowledge your team members. You want to thank them for their work, even if it's not in a formal occasion. So you'd want to do it formally. You'd want to have monthly awards, quarterly awards, annual awards, these sort of things. You'd want to celebrate the team's successes as well. But you could just do it in passing, in the elevator, right? Never miss an opportunity to listen and to build them up as appropriate. And then in the end, consider this, that there's no quality more important as trust. Or this is meant to be unique or clever or as rare. Imagine something that's so important and yet is so rare, right? It's like a diamond, a large crown jewel diamond of some monarch, right? It's the quality couldn't be more important, and yet it's rare. But you can achieve it. This is the gold. You have access to the diamond. You just need to dig away some of the dirt, right? And you will have this true competitive advantage known as trust. It is that important. And so I emphasize it with passion and with joy this week. And so one of the things I'll ask you to consider is defining trust, right? Defining trust, right? Is trust a prediction of someone's behavior because we've known them for a long time? Not really. And that's a lot of reasons people are disappointed because they stop there. It's good. It's not bad. I mean, right? It's not bad. It can be better, right? Defining trust. Those who learn to be open. We just talked about open communication. Maybe even exposed. We just talked about vulnerability on the last slide. Exposed to failures, weaknesses, or fears. I have known more managers, not tons and tons, but plenty actually, who won't say they're sorry, who are afraid to look broken or make a mistake. We're humans. You're the manager. We still know you're the boss. We respect you more if you admit some of these because we're a team. And so vulnerability-based trust, I think, is a simple and practical idea, right? I think it's that kind of idea where people aren't afraid to admit the truth. And they're not just doing things for political behavior that wastes everybody else's time and energy. Frankly, this is an opportunity to pause the lecture and think to yourself, what is trust? How do I define trust? Could trust be part of an assignment this week or in the final week? That's just a little teaser. But really, pause the tape and think, what does trust mean to me, both giving it and getting it? Now, I will give you a clue that some have come up with, and I love this. My bachelor's degree was in mathematics, so formulas resonate with how I think. Doesn't have to resonate with you, but it's just an idea starter. So here is a formula that I put at the top of the slide. Now, I didn't create this formula. I have seen lectures on it. I've read about it. So it's a real thing at major universities in academia, right? But so many put trust in this formula. So T, a little r, that's short for trust. Trust equals A plus B plus I. And that stands for ability. What's your ability? Plus benevolence, right? How do you feel about the company? Are you looking out for the best interests of the company? Or are you looking out for yourself, right? Plus integrity, right? Integrity is, we talked in week 1, key to leadership. A simple form of integrity is doing the right thing even when no one else is watching, right? Even though we could take a shortcut or skip it. That's not integrity. So a trust formula, trust equals your ability, right? You have to grow your ability. You have to have the skills necessary, plus benevolence, right? This is really kind of like also emotional IQ, emotional quotient that we talked about, plus integrity. Talked a lot about in the leadership and management weeks to start this term. So I think that's a great formula. I think it's a way of framing trust, but you'll have to come up with your own. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor, and I hope you will enjoy the process. Now, I mentioned open communication was key to building team trust. It's key to achieving that trust. But in addition, you have to be willing to take risks without a guarantee of success. So you have this open communication, but there's a little bit of fear and trepidation there, right? So you build the team up, you motivate them, you look for training opportunities, you find out their weaknesses. You want them to be aware of their own strengths and weaknesses and come ready to bear, to give all, or ask for help when they need it, right? Because it's about building that high performing team, which requires this sort of trust to go on, right? I mentioned being vulnerable without knowing whether or not that vulnerability will be respected and reciprocated. So often we hear, well, they don't like me, so I don't like them. Well, really, see, that's not sharing. I understand the sentiment, but it's not the emotional quotient that we were seeking in this coursework that should become, I hope, or is already a part of your everyday work and family life. You're so much happier if you can achieve this. So being vulnerable without knowing whether it'll be respected or reciprocated. I make this mistake myself. I'll walk down the street and I'll say hi to somebody. They don't say hi back. And what do you do under your breath? I do sometimes, and it's a mistake. I correct myself, but I'll be like, oh, well, hello to you too, or something, right? No, I said hello because I am giving my greeting. I don't need your greeting back. I want it, but I don't need it, right? Because I'm here to build up, to make sure that trust becomes part of our world. And then we want to get comfortable and become unafraid of things like, I was wrong. My last Air Force leader would never say they were wrong, even though they were wrong plenty. Of course, they didn't get promoted either, and they were asked to retire. So the system knew, right? It promotes good people, but they got to a point where they could never admit it. How about I need help? That's a great team member. It's okay. Doesn't make you weak. How about I'm not sure? Good, let's fill in those gaps together, right? These are managers who transform. How about I'm sorry? I've said that many times and have had several successful careers along the way, right? It works. How about I could add another one this? How about thank you? Okay. What else could you add to that? Good time to pause the recording, the lecture, and say, man, what else could I say to my team members that are right for my area of expertise, or where I work, or my family even, right? Okay. Am I vulnerable and willing to be? And it's hard. That's why we talked about back in emotional quotient week 3. We talked about emotional quotient is like a muscle that has to be exercised along the way. So that's kind of neat. Now, if we were in class in person, we'd have this sharing exercise, right? Share something about yourself, something that's a risk, something that makes you vulnerable, right? And I can tell you one of mine. I remember being in about 8th grade, and my parents made me do a wrestling summer camp just to keep me busy. I hate wrestling, but I did it because my parents said to. Well, really, the summer camp at the YMCA was a cover, in my view, for the local high school who had a state championship wrestling team that I wasn't part of. My parents were just making me do this. And they were coming up to the final day, and they were going to do a performance in front of parents. Well, my parents were busy working. They weren't going to show up. It's not they didn't love me. They're busy, right? And so the day before, the kid I'm supposed to play, who's a state champion, pinned me. And I begged my mom, don't make me go. Because I knew they weren't going to be there anyhow. She said, go anyhow. And you know what? I went. And at the end of 3 rounds, that kid did not pin me. I actually won. It was a moment of success. I took a risk. So anyhow, try your own personal exercise. I'm going to pause here before we come back to part 2. for week 8.